you've told me that your topmost on your CV is that you're a professor of at UC Berkeley in their business school of strategy and corporate social responsibility. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Good combination there. You are co-author of a book, and we're here today because of that book. Can you show us a copy?
Sure. Here's the book. It's in this together. It's, how Republicans, Democrats, capitalists, and activists are uniting to tackle climate change and more. It's written by a couple of endangered species, myself and Trammell Crow. We are Republican environmentalists. And, in the rest of the party, the extremists like to call us rhinos, Republicans in name only, and they shoot at us. So most of us have been either killed or we're hiding. But we believe that conservation is natural to the Republican Party, that we are trying to conserve this extraordinary living system we call our planet that is responsible for everything. And yeah, everything.
By the way, I date back to Merrill Lynch in the 70s, when there was a competition between the term corporate social responsibility and corporate social conscience, and the responsibility run out over conscience. Conscience was too whatever. But I was pushing for conscience. I thought we all have a conscience. But anyhow,
I think that, conscience, we talk now because, capitalism itself has come under such scrutiny, because I think the younger generations see the problems but not the benefits. And conscious capitalism is a focus of some of us on both the Republican and the Democratic side. Being aware of your impacts and being consciously dedicated to having a good impact is something we need to do now, because we know a lot of the externalities from capitalism, which are basically the socialized parts, the things we throw out for the public to deal with. These are the downsides, and we need to bring them in to the process.
Okay, well, I can't applaud you loudly enough for that thought, but is it possible within, now I don't call it capitalism, because for me, capitalism immediately engenders pushback. That makes you a communist or a socialist. I call it growth economics, a particular kind of economic system that we have now, where growth is axiomatic, where you have to keep promising growth, you have to keep growing. Year-to-date earnings have to be greater than year-to-date earnings last year. Every year, shareholders are expecting more. And we live in a world of going on 8 billion people where everybody is trying to grow in size. Is that possible in a limited environment? So is capitalism with limitations still capitalism? Can you take the growth out of growth economics without it falling apart?
Well, that is a great question. My answer is it depends on how you define capitalism. By my definition of capitalism, which is free enterprise between people, where each side gains from the trade, it is very possible. But certainly the popular definition of capitalism you might see coming from the left is an economy controlled by giant global corporations that are bent on growth at any cost. I don't like that kind of capitalism. I don't support that kind of capitalism. Here's where I think we are. The problem is not capitalism per se, free exchange of goods and services. That's a good thing. The problem is an industrial system that's run amok. And you pin it exactly. A system that is built on the fiction of perennial physical growth. Now, as a market person, I look at free markets as similar to natural systems. And I use the rainforest as my metaphor, if you will, for how systems evolve sustainably. In the rainforest or in nature, there is a period of innovation, that's the birth, the birth period where a cleared rainforest, cleared by a natural fire, grasses begin to grow, 1,000 species begin to grow. That creative phase is followed by a growth phase where you have highly energy intensive species that cover the bare ground. And then that growth phase, the physical growth phase, is succeeded by a much longer phase in which diversity happens. That the growth has created niches and an extraordinary diversity of species emerges. The same is true in an economy that is allowed to be, to go through its natural phases. What we've done is we, out of fear, have solidified into place the old industrial phase of what we call capitalism. We're trying to grow, grow, grow because we're panicked that if we don't grow physically, we'll collapse. The reality is if we do grow physically too long, we will collapse. We got almost 8 billion people out on a limb right now, and we got to learn to be more like the rainforest. That kind of capitalism is the capitalism that nourishes us.
Can we go down that rabbit hole a little bit further?
Sure.
How would you lay out steps? And by the way, let's return to that little rabbit hole and proceed down the rabbit hole. And how are we going to get from here, which is most people thinking are us turning out MBAs who are all pursuing growth opportunities. They all want to go into the financial industry because it's growing the fastest. So how do we change the current meme of infinite growth into a finite system into, maybe we can't physically grow. How do we make that change?
Well, I'll tell you, I think people are ready to make that change. I feel that there is an outlook. People realize that we're on the wrong path, both the right and the left. The problem is it's like we have systemic racism built into our school system and built into our criminal justice system. Well, we have systemic growth and collapse built into our economic system. It started or intensified with the New Deal. We remember the New Deal. It was an important part of digging us out of the Depression and winning a victory over fascism. But what it did was to combine big government, big corporations, and big labor into a single entity, if you will, that had a lot of political control and was able to mobilize us to produce a lot of stuff very quickly, and it was successful. But that basic, what Eisenhower, the Republican President Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex, still persists today, but it no longer has a leadership core. It just is an amorphous political machine that is managed by what we call the political industry. And that political industry is the set of political strategists and campaign folks and messengers and so on. They're all good people. They're just doing their job, but they find themselves in an environment where they are able to extract money from vested interests to manage policy on their behalf. So the common conception is we got big corporations. If you're on the left, big corporations are controlling politics. We got to get their money out of politics. If you're on the right, big labor unions and NGOs and their corporations are in control.
I was listening to a podcast that you and Trammell had done. Mm-hmm. First, I'd come across the concept of a political industry. What you mean is a political advertising industry, right?
No, I actually mean bigger than that. But advertising is the core. Well, it's not the core revenue generator. The advertising is the core revenue generator on the media side. But the political industry, here's how the political industry makes money. The first step of the political industry is to get a reliable, low-cost source of voters that can win elections. And the easiest way to do that, if you're on the left, is to broadcast to the left the most objectionable, awful, toxic things the right has to say, and then keep the left in their echo chamber so that's all they hear about the right. And you do the same thing to the right. You take the most toxic, ridiculous, insulting things that the left says, and you just broadcast to them. That gives you a nice, pure set of haters who are scared to death of the idiots on the other side that are about to take control, and they're willing to vote for their mediocre candidates because of the danger that's on the other side. We just saw that played out, right? So that's how politics works. The advantage of that, if you're a political strategist, is that now you don't have a governing majority. If we had a governing majority of reasonable people from the right to the left, then they could actually be in charge of policy. We call it democracy, representative democracy. It's a novel idea and we should try it again. But if we don't have a governing majority, then guess who gets to manage public policy? The political industry, lobbyists, strategists, poll takers, message makers, and so on. Again, these are not evil people. They just get up in the morning, go to work, and this is how their job works. This is how it's done. But
well, I don't say that for the most part, they're not evil people, but there are a few bad actors in there.
Sure. But here's the thing to really realize. If we were to eliminate every bad actor, every evil person in the political industry or any other industry, we would still have the evil. That's what systemic problems are all about. It's not the people that we need to eliminate. It's the systemic problem that we need to eliminate. We need to get that out of the system.
Do you have, Bill, an idea of how to get the money out of the system? For example, could we have elections in which we don't have money coming into it? Money is not allowed to come into it. Suppose you had a certain amount of TV time. Every candidate has a certain amount of money. No one is allowed to raise billions of dollars to outsource, your, advertising to this political industry. Could we then, would that be a basic step toward democracy?
It sounds like it. Here's my observation over the years is that when I want to understand a problem, I look to the left, because the left understands problems, but they tend to be in denial about solutions. When I want to understand a solution, I look to the right, because the right understands solutions, but tends to be in denial about the problems. So the left's natural tendency when they see something wrong is to say, let's make that illegal. Let's ban it, prevent it. And the problem that the right understands is that anytime you ban something, you create a black market for it. You create an alternative, behind the scenes, secret pathway. And that's what has tended to happen as we've tried to ban, say, political spending. First of all, now we have a system that legalizes extortion and provides you with the legal mechanisms to offer what would be called objectively extortion. So that's all legal now. We could make it illegal, but then it would find a way to happen because money flows like water. And so it'll just keep happening. Here's where I think that we can actually solve the problem, and that is by defunding the fear-based, divisive political and media industries. Now, how do we do that? Well, anytime you or I make a political contribution to a candidate who is wonderful, who we love, almost all the time it goes into a machine that is designed to make one party hate everybody in the other party. So we have to stop doing that.
Yeah.
And
but how do you stop doing that unless you don't allow funding of that sort?
We are, through the donor roundtable, a set of high net worth donors that are both Republicans and Democrats, we are taking our money out of that system and we're putting it into an alternative system that quite pragmatically is about attracting the middle 70%. We don't care about attracting the extremists on either side. They're good people too. They hold they hold the principles, but they're being exploited and manipulated to keep us apart. We're focused on the middle 70%. We have a database platform where we've identified who those folks are, and we are using big data for good to identify what they care about, how we bring them together, and then we're using predictive models to bring them together in campaigns. And we've won about 6 campaigns as a result of doing that now. So our big, hairy, audacious plan, quite frankly, with everyone so upset about the obvious dysfunctions in our system and unfortunately battling each other, we are recruiting, and we aim to recruit groups comprising 5 million people by 2024 who are from this middle 70%, but they are problem solvers and bridge builders and resolutionaries, as we say.
Two questions. One, what's the name of this consortium of big donors that wants to fund the middle ground? What do you call yourselves, if that can be shared?
Well, the name of the donor group is the Donor Roundtable. Pretty basic.
Simple enough.
And the name of the campaign is conveniently enough In This Together. Okay. So we have, through that wonderful team of donors who have invested to create an alternative political media infrastructure. The first part of it is the political infrastructure. It's a way for people to contribute to the causes they care about, whatever their positions are, through systems that reward solutions, not polarization. So we're not about hating people. We're not about any of that crap. That is a marketplace solution, but it does require that we go out and do it. It doesn't just happen.
Well, how will you move that through the social media and through the news that we have? How will you use the system with your own process?
Well, the way that we will grow this system is by awakening people gradually to the fact that we have all the power. I think ever since and I don't want to blame the New Deal, you know, it's really fun to do that on the right, but we needed to do that at the time. It was an emergency. What I blame is the consumer producer culture that grew from that essentially took away the agency of individuals and made people feel dependent on these giant institutions that we were all then tossed into, almost like soldiers. And we're still living that life. So people, by and large, no longer realize that they have all the money, all the power, all the muscle, and all the mind that's being extracted from us, not by other people so much as by the system. And so that's a very complicated way of basically saying, remind people to use your dollars and your votes to drive solutions, not polarization. The very simple way that we can do this is by teaming up with some of the best companies and brands out there that are all, like Unilever, for example, is my model for a company, a global company with a conscience that overtly attempts to market its products in healthy ways and to make people healthier through that. Now, they're not perfect by any means, but these companies, when they do right, the big brands and big retailers, they drive change through the entire global economy, better than a government can, better than the United Nations can. And they're motivated because they know, first of all, they would like to do good. Second, their customers are expecting them to do good. If we have 5 million people in the country who partner with some of the top retailers and brands who would like to save the environment, save democracy, and empower people, we can eliminate the profitability of the existing political model, and we can motivate the advertising industry to stay away from hate, because any brand that is funding hate is a brand that's in trouble.
How did you come up with the number 5 million, even as an approximation?
Yeah.
Why that scale?
5 million happens to be 5% of the typical voting population in a presidential election. We just had a record-breaking turnout. So, but typically 5 million, 5% is enough to turn every battleground state and district. So if you're watching what's happening on the electoral level nationally, this evenly divided duopoly of the right and the left, each trying to, compel people to hate the other side, has left us with a very tiny set of swing voters that might go either way. Because who wants to go either way? You know, when their choice is a devil over here and a devil over here, and they only know that one is a devil. So the key is to grow a small community in the middle, 5%, that essentially says, we will not accept candidates or campaigns that are about polarization. We will not vote for them in the primary or in the general election, and we will not buy products that use their advertising dollars to build up the hate generating media. 5 million is enough to make anybody in a competitive political race to give them an advantage if they're focused on solutions, and to knock them out of the race if they're focused on polarization and hate.
Well, heck, 5 million, if you had 5 million signed up, that would be enough to convince most corporations selling big brands, Johnson and Johnson.
Yeah, there are a lot of companies that are doing really good things. I have to tell you, corporations get a bad rap, and deservedly in many cases, because because of what you said earlier, the orientation to short-term profits, the fact that it's illegal for them, or some people would interpret that it's illegal for them to do something that's good for the public if it negatively affects their bottom line. I mean, these are ridiculous things. But companies like Nestle, companies like Unilever, Coca-Cola, Walmart. I mean, Walmart has been extraordinary in sustainability for the past 20 years. These are companies that can drive and have experience driving a lot of positive change. They do it with a little pressure, citizens get,
5 million people is a little bit of pressure there.
A little pressure, but you don't demonize them forever. The activist community has fallen into the trap that, demonization raises a lot of money, gets a lot of media, and so they just keep demonizing. Demonize for a week, collaborate for life. That's what you do. So it's a much more effective campaign strategy. And frankly, it's the campaign strategy that we've used on the environmental side in our work to save global forests and promote recycling and reuse and all of the things that I do in my day job.
That makes sense. You can be anywhere, but to affect, because of our strange way of voting, you have to be in every state, as we've just seen. So those 5 million would have to be everywhere: North Dakota, Mississippi, Nevada, California, to produce the kind of candidates that you're talking about. So you'd have to have the whole country involved. Is that not so? It sounds like.
Well, I believe you would and should have the whole country involved, because I believe that this can't be just a mechanistic, gaming of the political system to do good, because it can be ungamed to do bad. We already know that. So we need 5 million people across the country, and then we need 15 million, and then we need 25 million. We get up to those numbers, and the media will be transformed as well. But if you want to be strategic about it, you want to have 5% in every battleground every competitive primary and race in every battleground state, and that's actually a lot less than 5 million. So if we want to do it surgically and just mechanistically fix our democracy, that's a way to do it. But I'm a believer that we need to do it in a more authentic way, and that means 5 million people everywhere.
So tell me about EarthX and the offshoot now, EarthX TV.
EarthX is a place. EarthX is the most diverse playground, workground for environmentalists on the planet. When we were all on the ground, which was up until COVID through 2019, we brought together the largest group of people for any environmental event on the planet. 170,000 people came to Dallas, Texas, and we had everybody there. We had, billionaire donors. We had, anti-poverty activists. We had Republicans and Democrats, corporate CEOs, NGO leaders, Exxon, Greenpeace, frackers, hunters, vegetarians, vegans, fishers, you know, everybody, the cultural left, the cultural right, the religious right, the spiritual left, we had everybody there. That's true diversity, by the way. It's not getting a bunch of people together who look different but think the same. It's getting a lot of people together who are really different. They look different, they sound different, they think different. And the nice thing is that people are naturally, you know, a community. I don't have everything, you don't have everything, but we bring ourselves together and magic happens. It's how life happens. It's how, you know, all this happens. So it's a creative place. That's what EarthX is. Now, and a lot of good came from it, just from people meeting each other. We had certain objectives: save the oceans, save the forests, save climate, and we made good progress on those. But what really happens is the synchronicity of people getting together and discovering how they can do more when they're together than they ever can apart. So COVID comes along, we have to cancel the on-the-ground event, and we have to accelerate the production of our online. In a way, it was a favor to us. Now we have EarthX TV, we've just launched. This is an alternative media platform. The simple way to look at it is this is a place you can go to and your family can go to see movies and documentaries, attend conferences and attend events, learn about issues, learn about science, which, by the way, is just another word for nature. It's not something separate. This is how nature works. And you can actually live an enriching life rather than being stuck on the TV, as I often am, watching, you know, old episodes of and Modern Family. So it's a place that we can gather for enriching media. But what it really is for us in the longer term is an example of how media can be in an economy where we're not trading each other's vulnerabilities for profit, where we're not just triggering each other to watch those inane, you know, shows that I still watch to divert us from the emptiness in our lives, but to actually connect with each other and live more meaningful lives and remind us of what we knew before World War II, you know, when we became a giant machine, which is that we are individuals in communities bonded by our spiritual core, and here in our very, very, very small way to contribute to a very, very, very large reality.
So EarthX TV then is it earthx.tv if we go there as a
earthxtv.org.
.org, okay.
Yeah, so earthxtv.org. Come, join, participate. There's a lot to do there. It's a work in progress, so we'll be improving it, you know, over the next 40 years. It's a great opportunity to engage with people that you don't hear from outside your echo chamber, whether you're inside the Trump echo chamber or the Biden echo chamber, the red or the blue. You can come to EarthX TV and discover your complementary opposites.
One of our members is a professor at Santa Barbara College, and I sent her your website, and she immediately put her students in touch with it. She was very excited by your youth contests, and they also were excited, and I think you're going to have some traffic from that. I really love that you focus on communication between people. I used to teach in college, and I was a professor of communication. And for me, the understanding of communication is that you only communicate when you're talking to equals. If you're talking down to people, if you're talking, you know, to the side, you have to talk to yourself, you know, to an equal.
Yeah.
This is the critical element. So I loved your concept.
I think that's beautiful. My degree is in journalism. You know, that's a profession that used to exist, you know, a few generations ago. And now they don't even have, you know, schools of journalism. Often they have schools of mass communications, and they make it a plural. You know, so it's not actually communicating with people. It's the process of persuading, convincing, manipulating, and so on. And that's a disturbing turn for communication as well as for media. So I love what you taught, and we certainly need more of it.